Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In the last episode on Chinese football, I mentioned how rejecting a national team call-up can lead to serious consequences in China's sports system. In particular, athletes who refuse to join the national team due to playing abroad are often seen as betraying the motherland, almost equivalent to committing treason. Such choices don't just end their professional careers in China. In some cases, even their basic civil rights can be compromised. Today, let's take a deeper look at a few notorious cases where athletes faced harsh punishment for refusing national team call-ups after going overseas. Let's start with the most well-known example, Wang Zhizhi. He was the first Chinese basketball player to join the NBA, signing with the Dallas Mavericks in 2001. That move marked the beginning of China's NBA journey. At the time, Wang still belonged to the Baiyi sports team, which was part of the Chinese military system. Under military rules, he was required to return to China each summer to train with the national team. In 2002, the FIBA World Championship was held in Indianapolis. For such a major tournament, China, as usual, organized months of closed training camps. National team training began in late May, right after the NBA season ended. According to protocol, Wang should have returned to China immediately. However, his NBA contract was still uncertain. Hoping to stay in the league, Wang chose to remain in the US for recovery and conditioning and planned to play in the NBA Summer League starting in July. He offered to rejoin the national team once they arrived in the US for the tournament, a logical proposal from a training and performance standpoint. But to the leadership back home, his decision was viewed as insubordination, or worse, a political problem. As a result, he faced severe punishment. State media backlash. People's Daily and Xinhua news agency publicly accused him of lacking a sense of duty and forgetting his roots. Military censure. The Baiyi team announced he had illegally stayed overseas and considered his actions a serious breach of discipline. Expelled from the national team. He was permanently removed and banned from participating in all future international competitions. Media blackout. His name and image were scrubbed from state media, and all commercial endorsements were cancelled. There were even rumors that his family in China came under government surveillance. Meanwhile, Wang's life in the US was also complicated by bureaucratic pressure. He had left China on an official diplomatic passport valid for only 1 year. Though he had obtained a US green card, US law requires a valid personal passport to accompany it. Returning to China to apply for a civilian passport would have risked him being detained and prevented from leaving again. This standoff dragged on for years. It wasn't until 2006, with the 2008 Beijing Olympics on the horizon, and after Yao Ming and Menke Batir intervened on his behalf, that the Chinese Basketball Association agreed to a compromise. Wang issued a public apology, and the federation granted him a return to the national team. But long before Wang Zhizhi, there was another pioneer who openly challenged the Chinese system, Ma Jian. In the early 1990s, Ma Jian was a star forward for China's national team, and widely considered a generational talent. What made him different, though, was his fierce independence and liberal mindset traits that stood out sharply in the rigid environment of China's national sports system. In 1993, without approval from the Chinese Basketball Association, Ma went to the US to study and play basketball. He became the first Chinese player in NCAA history, joining the University of Utah, while pursuing a master's degree. His goal was to develop through the American system and eventually reach the NBA. Looking back, this should have been celebrated. As early as 1987, Chinese player Song Tao had been drafted by the Atlanta Hawks, only missing his shot due to injuries. Ma Jian's move was a natural step toward internationalizing Chinese basketball. But in the wake of political turmoil like the Tiananmen crackdown, China's leadership was hypersensitive about unauthorized foreign engagement. Ma's decision was perceived as defying authority and abandoning the system. The CBA and military repeatedly ordered him to return. He refused and publicly declared, "I don't belong to any system. "I belong to myself." That single sentence became the defining moment of his break from the Chinese establishment. As a result, he was hit with a series of punishments, expelled from the national team permanently, media blackout by CCTV and Xinhua, censorship of NBA footage. In 1995, Ma briefly signed with the LA Clippers, but CCTV edited out his appearances during NBA broadcasts. Branded a traitor, he was labeled a deserter and enemy of the state, and was effectively erased from public discourse in China for years. While in the US, Ma repeatedly applied to rejoin the national team, including for the 1996 Olympics, but was consistently denied, allegedly due to top-level interference. It wasn't until the late 90s, when reform and opening policies deepened and China's professional league took shape, that Ma was finally allowed to return to play in the domestic league. Still, the national team never welcomed him back. Even after all that, Ma never backed down. He continued to criticize the Chinese sports system publicly and advocated for athletes' right to control their own careers. He once said, "I have no regrets. I just wanted to prove that a Chinese person can succeed without the system. I played for China for 10 years. I didn't betray my country. I just didn't want to be a slave." Personally, I deeply respect people like Ma Jian, Wang Zhizhi, Lian A in tennis, and He Zhili in table tennis athletes, who dared to stand up for personal autonomy in the face of China's all-encompassing state sports apparatus. They sacrificed a great deal to pursue dignity and professional freedom, and thanks to their struggle, later generations of athletes enjoyed relatively more breathing room. Without pioneers like them, we might never have witnessed the brief surge of Chinese players abroad in football, or the international success of Yao Ming, Yi Jianlian, and others in the NBA. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, comment, and share. I'll see you in the next episode.